Hello, class. This will be the last of the recorded lectures for section 6.2, which talks about binomial distribution. This is a distribution that is used to analyze discrete variables. And remember that there are two outcomes to every binomial experiment. It's either success or it's failure. And so what we're going to talk about now is calculations of mean and standard deviation and variance as well. The relationship between the two is just the square. Standard deviation squared equals variance. So before we get started, we've been talking quite a bit about this experiment where you are flipping three coins. And we define the variable x as the number of heads of that particular outcome. And we talked about how to calculate the probabilities using hand calculations. And then we started talking about how this is a binomial experiment and using the binomial distribution to do it. So now let's talk about what the mean of this particular outcome would be. Well, you remember we and I think the last recorded lecture, we put up a nice little bar chart of this particular experiment. Here is the x values, 0, 1, 2, and 3 heads. And here's our probabilities of getting such. And so if you think about how this works, where is the mean, right? What would be the mean of this? Well, remember, the median splits everything up 50-50. The goal is both the median and the mean do exactly the same thing. So if you think about it, you would kind of split it right down the middle here, right? Think about it. And you think about it, there is what? 50% probability below and 50% probability above. And so what would be right in the middle? Well, what's in the middle of 1 and 2? Well, if you average those, that would be 1.5. And so remember, median always gives you a point value, right? Or you average the 2 points in the middle. And so the calculation for these, the good news is it's pretty straightforward and it has a nice closed formula that you could use your calculator for this one. Don't need a spreadsheet, but I'll show you how to do it on a spreadsheet as well. So here's the definition of the three. You have the mean, which is n times the probability of success, which is p. And then you could see the standard deviation and the variance where it's n, p, and 1 minus p. A lot of other stats books use the letter q, and that's 1 minus p, which is the probability of failure, but this book doesn't do that. So let's take a look at the problem I have on the whiteboard. And remember, the p-value in this case is 0.5, right? Probability of getting ahead. So what would be our mean, mu of x? Well, again, that would be n times p. And if you do that, that would be 0.5 for p and 3 for n. And just like we were estimating, it was right in the middle, and so it'd be 1.5. So let's calculate the standard deviation. And so the standard deviation is the square root of n times p, 1 minus p. And so when you do that, running out of a little room here, but it would look like this. Square root of 3 times a half times another half, 0.5. Then you take the square root of that. So you get out your handy calculator and it'd be 0.5 times, 0.5 times, 0.25, 3 times. So that would be square root of 0.75. And when you take the square root of that, you would get standard deviation of 0.866. And what's the variance? Well, you take the square of that. So if you take the square of that, you would see you'd get back to 0.75. So the variance, which is standard deviation squared, equals 0.75. So let's walk through a couple more examples. Here's a new example. There we go. Couldn't find the right button to click. And so here's an example. Probability that a new car of a certain model will require repairs during warranty period is 0.15. And so a particular dealership sells 80 of these cars, and let X be the number of cars that will require a repair during the warranty period. Find the mean and standard deviation. And so in this case, our N value is 80, and our probability of success, which wouldn't be success if you were the car owner, right? You need to go get a repair under warranty. And so you could see if you multiply those two numbers together, N times P, you would get 12. So the average or the mean would be 12 cars out of the 80 are going to come back for repair. That's a kind of a nice number to know, to be honest with you, if you're a car dealership. And so to do the standard deviation, you take 80 and then 0.18 and then 1 minus 0.18. You can get out your calculator and do that calculation, and out comes 3.194. And so let's do one more. And actually, let's do the calculation of the last problem we did in the previous recorded lecture. This was this internet user idea that was 30% was on Pinterest, right? And so if you pick 15 random internet users, what would be the mean and standard deviation? If you remember from our last lecture, we walked through a variety of different calculations. This here was all the calculations that we did. So let me show you how you could do it if you just have your spreadsheet handy with regards to that. So again, just to make sure we have the right numbers, we have P equals 30%, which would be 0.3. And we have N equals 15, just to make sure that we can see it on here. Okay, so what's the mean? Well, the mean is N times P. So you could do equals, and so that would be 15 times 0.3. And so the mean would be 4.5. So if you think about how 30% is not quite 50, right? If the mean was 50, then what's half of 15? It would be 7.5. So you would think it should be, because the probability of success is less than 50, you would think it should be less than the 7.5 idea of the middle number of 15, right? And so what's the standard deviation? So I'll show you how I set this up. And I set it up very algebraically. So what I will do is I will hit the equal sign, and then I'll have one parentheses, and this is the big one, which I'll take the square root of. And so the N value is 15, so multiply by 15, and then it would be times 0.3, right? So some of you could do this in your head, right? 1 minus 0.3, right? 1 minus P is 0.7. Or if you wanted to do it, let the machine, you have to put another parentheses in there to multiply those together. I forgot my multiplication sign, so let me stick that in there. And then you want to N close parentheses. And then what I do to do the square root, it's the exponent, and this exponent for a square root is 1/2. So I type in 0.5, and you could see you would get 1.775. And if you took a look at these calculations that are in here, you get the exact same answer. So if you're doing a bunch of calculations with the spreadsheet, I would just keep using the spreadsheet as your calculator. But again, it's just my preference. Doesn't mean it's right for you. You have a variety of different ways. You have calculators, spreadsheets that help you as well. So this actually ends the lectures for section 6.2. And we are skipping section 6.3, which talks about Poisson distribution. It's a good distribution, but in a basic stats class, it's the binomial distribution is much more widely used throughout various industries. So that's a good one to go over.